Have you ever been told you don't belong? That your presence, or the presence of the people you love most, is an inconvenience? Especially during a time that's supposed to be about family and joy. Hello everyone, and a warm welcome to my channel. To all the new faces here, I am so genuinely glad you found your way to this corner of the internet. And to my early subscribers, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support as I begin this journey of sharing stories that matter. My name is Melissa. I'm a mother, a wife, and not so long ago, a simple phone call while I was folding my children's laundry shattered the illusion of my picture-perfect family Christmas. It was my mother-in-law, calmly informing me that my kids, my 7-year-old daughter and 5-year-old son, were no longer welcome at her Christmas Eve celebration. They were too much, too loud, too wild, an embarrassment. I was told to make other arrangements. For 15 years I'd kept the peace. I'd swallowed insults, smiled through subtle dismissals, and tucked my children's excitement into the rigid box of someone else's expectations. But in that moment, holding my daughter's tiny sweater, something in me broke. And then, something far stronger was forged. This is the story of how I agreed not to bring my kids to Christmas. But I agreed entirely on my terms. It's a story about finding your voice when everyone expects your silence, about protecting your children from the very people who should cherish them, and about what happens when you finally decide to stop playing defense and start playing chess. If you've ever felt underestimated, if you've ever had to draw a line in the sand with family, or if you just love a story about quiet strength turning into unshakable power, then you're in the right place. So, make yourself comfortable, cozy. And before we dive into my world, if this is the kind of story that connects with you, please do give this video a thumbs up, it truly helps. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you're new here, consider subscribing. You won't want to miss what happens next. This is, my parents told me not to bring my kids to Christmas. I agreed on my terms. Let's begin. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was folding laundry. My mother-in-law's voice cut through the speaker like ice. Melissa, we need to discuss Christmas arrangements. Franklin and I have decided it's best if you don't bring the children this year. The house will be too crowded, and honestly, we think it's time for a more adult celebration. I stopped mid-fold, my hands frozen on one of Emma's tiny sweaters. Excuse me. You heard me. We're hosting Christmas Eve, and we'd prefer if you made other arrangements for the children. Perhaps your sister could watch them. My chest tightened. Emma was 7. Noah was 5. They'd been asking about Christmas at Grandma's house for weeks, excited about the big tree and the cookies. You're uninviting your grandchildren from Christmas? Don't be dramatic, Melissa. We're simply saying this year needs to be different. We'll see them another time. I hung up without another word, my hands shaking. That night, I sat in the dark living room long after the kids were asleep. My husband Brian came home late, as usual. His tie loosened and his face tired. When I told him about his mother's call, he barely looked up from his phone. Maybe it's not such a bad idea. Mom's been stressed about hosting, and you know how overwhelming the kids can be. Overwhelming. My voice was quiet, dangerous. Your children are overwhelming. He shifted uncomfortably. That's not what I meant. I just think maybe we should respect their wishes this year. Pick our battles. I stared at my husband, this man who'd promised to stand beside me, and realized I was completely alone. But I wasn't helpless. Not anymore. I'd spent 15 years keeping peace with his family, swallowing insults, accepting their subtle dismissals. That ended tonight. The next morning my phone rang again. My mother-in-law's voice had that false sweetness that always preceded criticism. Melissa, dear, I wanted to follow up on our conversation. I hope you understand we're only thinking of what's best. Your parenting style is just so relaxed. The children need structure, discipline. When they're here, they're wild. Frankly, it's embarrassing. I said nothing, just listened. Her talk. Last Christmas, Emma knocked over that vase. And Noah was running through the halls. People notice these things, Melissa. It reflects poorly on all of us. I understand. I said calmly, my finger hovering over the record button I'd started using. Thank you for sharing your concerns. After we hung up, I saved the recording with yesterday's date. Evidence number 2. That evening, Emma climbed into my lap with her favorite book. Mama, how many days until we go to Grandma's house? I want to show her the ornament I made at school. Noah appeared at my elbow, his gap-toothed smile wide. Will there be cookies? Grandma makes the best cookies. My throat tightened. How do you tell your children that their own grandparents don't want them there? That they've been deemed too loud, too messy, too much? We're going to have a special Christmas this year, I said carefully. Maybe here at home, just us. We can make our own cookies. Emma's face fell. But Grandma's tree is so big. And the presents. Will Grandma be mad if we come? Noah asked quietly. That question broke something in me. These innocent children, worrying about adult cruelty. I hugged them both tightly. No one should ever make you feel unwelcome, babies. Never. I couldn't sleep that night. While Brian snored beside me, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, researching. Grandparents' rights, custody arrangements, documentation requirements. By 3 a.m., I had pages of notes and a plan forming. First, document everything. Every call, every interaction, every slight. Second, protect the children's interests legally if necessary. Third, stop playing defense and start playing chess. My mother-in-law thought she held all the power because she had money, because Brian was afraid of disappointing her, because I'd always been too polite to fight back. She was about to learn differently. I opened a new folder on my computer and titled it, Christmas 2024, Evidence. Then I started a detailed timeline of every incident, every dismissive comment, every time she'd undermined my parenting. 15 years of memories suddenly became ammunition. Saturday morning I took the kids shopping for decorations. We were in the craft store when I heard her voice. My mother-in-law stood near the registers, talking to another woman I recognized from their church. Poor Brian, she said, not bothering to lower her voice. Married to someone so overwhelmed by simple parenting. The children run wild because she just can't handle them. No discipline whatsoever. The other woman made sympathetic noises. I positioned myself behind a display, phone out, recording. Emma tugged my sleeve, but I held up one finger. We've tried to help, but she's so defensive. This Christmas we simply had to draw a line. The children need proper role models. When she left, I saved the recording and took the kids to get ice cream. They didn't need to know what I'd heard. Monday morning I sat in a lawyer's office downtown. Janet Sherman specialized in family law. She listened to everything, the phone calls, the recordings, the pattern of exclusion and criticism. You have options, she said, her pen tapping her notepad. If they're undermining your parenting and creating a hostile environment, you can limit contact. If your husband won't support you, we can discuss other arrangements. I don't want to keep the kids from their grandparents entirely. I just want them to stop treating me like I'm incompetent. Then we document everything. And we prepare for the possibility that they'll escalate. People like this don't respond well to boundaries. I left with a retainer paid and a clear sense of purpose. For the first time in days I could breathe. That night I tried one more time with Brian. Your mother recorded herself saying our children are wild and I'm incompetent. She's spreading rumors about my parenting. Doesn't that bother you? He rubbed his face tiredly. She's old-fashioned. She doesn't mean anything by it. She uninvited our children from Christmas. She's hosting. It's her right to decide. It's not about rights, Brian. It's about respect. About protecting our kids from people who make them feel unwanted. He was silent for a long moment. What do you want me to do? Stand up for us. Tell your mother that her behavior is unacceptable. You know I can't do that. She'll what? Disinherit you. Cut you off. Brian, you're 53 years old. When do you stop being afraid of your mother? He left the room without answering. But later, very late, he came to bed and whispered, I'm sorry. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I decided to test the waters. I invited the kids to make Christmas cards at our dining table, then casually mentioned it to Brian's sister, knowing she'd tell his mother. Sure enough, within an hour, my mother-in-law appeared at my door unannounced. I heard you're making Christmas cards. How lovely. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. May I come in? Of course. I led her to the dining room where Emma and Noah were surrounded by glitter and markers. Grandma! Emma jumped up, glitter flying. My mother-in-law's face tightened. Careful, child. You're making a mess. She looked at me. Do you ever teach them to clean up after themselves? They're being creative. We'll clean together when they're done. Well, I won't stay. I just wanted to remind you about our conversation. Christmas Eve is for adults only this year. Noah's little face crumpled. I'd positioned my phone on the counter, camera aimed at the room, already recording. I heard you clearly, I said calmly. The children won't be there. After she left, I had it all on video, her disdain, Noah's hurt, everything. The next day, I ran into our neighbor outside the grocery store. She looked uncomfortable, then pulled me aside. Melissa, I don't know if I should tell you this, but I heard something disturbing. My stomach dropped. What? I was at a book club Thursday night. Your mother-in-law was there. She told everyone you're having some kind of breakdown. That you're unstable and the children might not be safe with you. She said she and Franklin are considering steps to protect the kids. The world tilted. She said I'm unstable. She made it sound like she was so worried. But Melissa, I've known you for 5 years. You're one of the most stable, loving mothers I know. I thought you should know what she's saying. I thanked her and sat in my car for 20 minutes, shaking with rage. This wasn't just about Christmas anymore. She was attacking my fitness as a mother. This was war. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning. When I got inside, I locked myself in the bathroom and let myself cry for exactly 5 minutes. Then I washed my face, looked at myself in the mirror, and made a decision. If she wanted to question my stability, I'd show her exactly how stable and strategic I could be. I pulled out my phone and started making a list of everyone who knew me as a parent. Teachers, neighbors, the pediatrician, other parents from school. Each one was a potential witness to counter her lies. By the time Brian got home that evening, I had 17 names and had already started reaching out to document my relationships with each of them. That evening, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. The text read, "This is Brian's cousin Alex. We need to talk. I know what Diane is doing, and I have information you need." We met at a coffee shop the next morning. Alex was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and direct. My aunt has done this before. When my sister divorced her husband, Diane spread rumors that she was mentally ill. She tried to get custody of the kids for herself. It took 2 years and thousands in legal fees for my sister to clear her name. Why didn't anyone warn me? Because she's good at dividing people, making everyone think they're the only one she confides in. But I've kept records, have emails, texts. I'll testify if you need me to. An unexpected ally. My mother-in-law had made a critical mistake. She'd underestimated how many people she'd hurt over the years. Alex pulled out a folder thick with documents. Look, I've been documenting her behavior for years, waiting for someone to finally stand up to her. She did this to my sister, to Brian's ex-girlfriend before you, even to Franklin's own sister back in the 90s. There's a pattern here that goes back decades. I flipped through the pages. Emails where Diane bragged about manipulating family members, text messages where she coordinated smear campaigns, even a letter from Franklin's sister describing how Diane had driven her away from the family entirely. "This is incredible," I whispered. "It's ammunition," Alex corrected. "Use it well." I planned a casual Sunday brunch, inviting Brian's family under the guise of making peace. My mother-in-law arrived with Franklin, both dressed impeccably. The children were on their best behavior, serving fruit and setting the table beautifully. Throughout brunch, I was gracious and calm while my mother-in-law made small, cutting remarks. "Melissa, dear, Is Noah wearing pajama pants? To a family meal. And, Emma's hair is so wild. Don't you brush it. Every word was captured on the camera I'd hidden on the bookshelf. Every eye roll, every condescending smile. By the time they left, I had 30 minutes of footage showing exactly what I dealt with, and how well-behaved and sweet my children actually were. Franklin had barely said a word all morning, just nodded along with his wife, complicit in his silence. I watched the footage that night with Janet on a video call. "This is gold," she said, making notes. "Notice how the children are perfectly polite and she still finds fault. Notice how you remain calm and respectful while she's consistently critical. A judge will see exactly what's happening here." The video also captured something I hadn't noticed in the moment. The way Emma's shoulders slumped every time her grandmother spoke, the way Noah had started hiding behind me. My children were already learning to protect themselves emotionally. That realization made my resolve even stronger. That night, Brian found me in the kitchen. He looked older suddenly, worn down. "I watched some of the videos from today." Froze. "You did. You left your laptop open. I saw how she talked to you." "To the kids." He sat down heavily. "I never realized. Or maybe I didn't want to see it." "Brian." "No, let me finish. I've been a coward. You've been dealing with this alone for 15 years, and I just told you to keep the peace." "Sorry." "I'm so sorry." He was crying. I'd never seen my husband cry. "What do we do now?" he asked. "We protect our children. Together." He nodded. "Together." We stayed up until 3 in the morning, Brian telling me stories I'd never heard before. How his mother had driven away his high school girlfriend with lies. How she'd sabotaged his first job because she didn't approve of the company. How she'd threatened to disinherit him when he'd first wanted to marry me. "She said you weren't good enough," he admitted, shame coating his words. "She said you came from nothing and would embarrass the family. I married you anyway, but I never stood up to her after that. I just tried to keep both of you happy, and I failed. You're standing up now," I said. "That's what matters." The letter arrived 3 days later, addressed to me. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting from old Christmas cards. It was from Brian's late father's sister, Aunt Gwen, who'd moved to Arizona years ago. "Dear Melissa," it read. "I've heard through family channels what Diane is doing. I want you to know this isn't the first time. When Brian was young, she drove away his first girlfriend with lies and manipulation. She's done this to every woman who's been close to Brian or Franklin. I'm attaching copies of letters she wrote to me over the years that show her pattern of behavior. Use them if you need them. That woman has controlled this family long enough." Inside were photocopies of letters spanning 30 years, each one showing my mother-in-law's manipulative nature in her own handwriting. It was perfect evidence. One letter from 1995 detailed how Diane had successfully removed a woman Franklin's brother had been dating by spreading rumors about her family's financial troubles. Another from 2003 described her strategy for convincing Brian's college girlfriend that she wasn't suitable for the family. The earliest letter, dated 1987, was perhaps the most chilling. Diane writing to Gwen about how she'd learned from her own mother that controlling the women controls the family line. Called Gwen immediately. She was warm and apologetic. I should have spoken up years ago, but Diane cut me off when I tried to defend Franklin's brother's girlfriend. I've regretted my silence ever since. When Alex told me what was happening with you, I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I organized a small gathering the following Saturday. Just close family and a few neighbors. Nothing formal, just a chance for people to see our normal family life. My mother-in-law arrived uninvited, of course. She swept in like she owned the place, immediately criticizing the food, the decorations, and the children's table manners. But this time I had witnesses. My neighbors saw her behavior firsthand. Alex was there, recording on her phone discreetly. Brian's aunt had flown in from Arizona specifically for this. When my mother-in-law announced loudly, "Melissa, these children need to learn respect. They're practically feral," our neighbor Stacy actually gasped. Later Stacy pulled me aside. "I had no idea. I always thought she was just old-fashioned, but that was cruel. Now you see what I deal with. If you ever need someone to speak up for you, I'm here." The gathering had served its purpose perfectly. Emma's teacher, who I'd invited, had witnessed Diane criticizing Emma's drawing in front of everyone. Our pediatrician's wife, also present, had heard Diane question my children's health and development inappropriately. By the end of the afternoon, I had 6 more people who'd volunteered to provide statements about what they'd witnessed. Most importantly, Franklin had pulled Brian aside at one point. I'd positioned myself close enough to overhear. "Son, your mother's behavior today was inexcusable. I've let this go on too long. I'm sorry." It was the first crack in Franklin's complicity, and it mattered. The breaking point came Sunday evening. Emma, sweet Emma, walked up to her grandmother with a drawing she'd made. "I made this for you, Grandma. It's our family at Christmas." My mother-in-law glanced at it dismissively. "That's nice, dear. Why don't you go play now? The adults are talking." Emma's lip trembled. "But I worked really hard on it. See, that's you and Grandpa and..." "Emma," I said, "go play. Children should be seen and not heard." Emma started crying. Noah, protective as always, took her hand. "Come on, Emma. We don't need mean people anyway." My mother-in-law's face went red. "How dare you speak to me that way? Melissa, do you see? This is exactly what I mean. No discipline whatsoever." But something had changed in the room. Everyone had seen it. How she'd crushed Emma's joy. How she'd been cruel to a 7-year-old trying to show love. Brian stood up. "Mom, I think you should leave." "What? You heard me. Leave. Now." Diane looked around the room, expecting support, but found none. Alex was staring at her with undisguised disgust. Aunt Gwen had tears in her eyes. Even Franklin looked ashamed. "You will regret this," Diane hissed at Brian. "All of you will regret this." "The only thing I regret," Brian said quietly, "is not doing this 15 years ago." After they left, I held Emma while she cried, her small body shaking. "Why doesn't Grandma love me, Mama?" she asked. "Sometimes grown-ups forget how to love properly," I said carefully. "But that's their problem, not yours. You're so loved, baby. So loved." The next morning, I filed the paperwork Janet had prepared. It wasn't a custody suit or anything dramatic, just a formal request for documentation of our parenting arrangements, with stipulations about who could be around the children and under what circumstances. All the evidence went with it. Recordings, videos, letters, witness statements. Janet had organized it perfectly, showing a clear pattern of harassment and manipulation. "This protects you," Janet explained. "If she tries to claim you're unfit, you have documented proof of her behavior. If she tries to interfere with custody, you have grounds to restrict access." Within 48 hours, my mother-in-law received the documents. Her lawyer called Janet immediately, blustering about family privacy and overreaction. Janet shut him down cold. "Your client has been slandering my client publicly, threatening her parenting, and emotionally abusing her grandchildren. We have extensive documentation. I suggest you advise your client to cease all harassment immediately." The legal filing had another effect I hadn't anticipated. It made everything real and official for Brian's extended family. Within days, I received calls from relatives I barely knew, expressing support and sharing their own stories of Diane's manipulation. Brian's uncle called to apologize for not intervening sooner. Even Franklin's business partner reached out, mentioning that he'd always found Diane's treatment of family members troubling. The isolation Diane had counted on was crumbling. She'd controlled the family through division, but the legal action had paradoxically brought everyone together against her behavior. She came to my house 3 days later, unannounced and furious. I watched through the window as she marched up the walk, Franklin trailing behind her. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "How dare you involve lawyers?" She thrust papers at me. "Family matters should stay in the family. You made this a legal matter when you started telling people I'm mentally unstable and my children aren't safe with me." "I never." I have recordings, multiple witnesses, documents. Do you want to do this publicly, Diane? Because I have enough evidence to make this very public indeed. Franklin looked genuinely shocked. Recordings. Diane, what did you say? She sputtered, her confident facade cracking. This is ridiculous. I'm their grandmother. I have rights. You have the rights I grant you, I said calmly. And right now, until you can treat me and my children with basic respect, those rights are suspended. Brian will never allow this. Brian filed those papers with me. He's inside right now, and he agrees with every word I'm saying. That was when she knew she'd lost. Franklin stepped forward, and for the first time I saw real emotion on his face. Diane, maybe we should go. Maybe we should listen to what they're saying. Listen. Our son is betraying his own mother because of this woman. This woman is his wife, Franklin said quietly. And maybe if we'd treated her like family instead of an outsider, we wouldn't be here. Diane's mouth opened and closed, speechless. I'd never heard Franklin contradict her before. None of us had. The real shock came 2 days later. Janet called me with news. Remember how your mother-in-law claimed she was so concerned about the children's welfare? Well, her lawyer got overconfident and filed a response that included some very specific allegations about your parenting. And our private investigator looked into it. Turns out she hired someone to follow you, trying to catch you doing something wrong. But here's the twist. Her investigator actually filed a report saying you're an exemplary parent. He refused to falsify evidence. We have his statement now, and he's willing to testify that she pressured him to lie. My mother-in-law's own investigator had become my witness. The irony was perfect. There's more, Janet continued. A teacher from Emma's school reached out. Apparently, your mother-in-law called the school 3 times claiming you were neglectful. The principal has documentation of all of it and is prepared to testify about the harassment. Everything was crumbling for her. Janet sent over the investigator's full report that evening. It was thorough and damning, not of me but of the person who'd hired him. He'd documented his interactions with Diane, including recorded phone calls where she'd explicitly asked him to find something, anything she could use against me. When he'd refused, she'd threatened not to pay him. He'd kept everything, knowing it might be needed. The report also included his actual observations of me, picking the kids up from school on time, engaging with them warmly, maintaining a clean and safe home, attending parent-teacher conferences, taking them to regular doctor's appointments. Subject demonstrates consistent, appropriate parenting, he'd written. No evidence of neglect or instability. Children appear well-adjusted, happy, and properly cared for. The hearing was brief. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, reviewed our evidence packet. My mother-in-law's lawyer tried to paint this as a family disagreement blown out of proportion. Then Janet presented the recordings. We heard my mother-in-law's voice. The children are wild. She's incompetent. We need to protect them from her instability. We saw the video of her dismissing Emma's drawing, making Noah cry. We heard testimony from Alex, from Aunt Gwen, from our neighbors, from Emma's teacher. The judge's expression grew colder with each piece of evidence. Finally she spoke. Mrs. Franklin, your behavior toward your daughter-in-law and grandchildren is, frankly, appalling. The evidence shows a pattern of harassment, defamation, and emotional abuse. Your claim that you're acting in the children's best interest is contradicted by every piece of testimony here. Motion granted. Supervised visitation only. Pending family counseling. My mother-in-law went pale. The judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, I'm ordering a 6-month review. If you complete counseling and demonstrate genuine change in behavior, we can revisit the visitation arrangements. However, any violation of this order, any attempt to contact the family outside of supervised visits, any continued defamation, will result in a complete cessation of grandparent access. Do you understand? Diane could barely whisper. Yes, Your Honor. As we left the courtroom, I saw her sitting on a bench outside, Franklin beside her, both looking decades older than they had an hour ago. Part of me felt sorry for them, but a larger part felt free. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in years. Brian held my hand tightly, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. The judge's ruling was clear. My mother-in-law could only see the children with supervision, and only after she completed counseling. She was ordered to cease all defamatory statements and harassment. If she violated the order, she'd face contempt charges. That evening I got flowers from Alex with a note. "You did what my sister couldn't. Thank you for standing up." Stacy brought over dinner. "I'm so glad you fought back." Emma asked if we could make Christmas cookies now, just us. Noah wanted to know if we could have a real tree this year, a big one. "The biggest one we can fit," I promised. We spent that evening planning our Christmas. Really our Christmas, not the version Diane had always dictated. Emma wanted to make ornaments from construction paper. Noah wanted to leave cookies for Santa, something Diane had always said was too messy. Brian suggested we start a tradition of opening one present on Christmas Eve. "Can we invite Alex?" Emma asked. "And Aunt Gwen?" "Of course we can," I said. "We can invite anyone we want." The freedom in that statement was intoxicating. For 15 years, our holidays had been dictated by Diane's schedule, Diane's preferences, Diane's standards. Now we have to choose. Now we have to build something new. Christmas Eve arrived with soft snow and bright lights. Our house looked magical, not expensively decorated like my in-laws' mansion, but warm and full of love. Emma and Noah had made ornaments for every branch. We'd baked cookies all afternoon, frosting them with too much icing and laughter. At 6 p.m. our doorbell rang. Brian answered it and came back looking grim. "They're here. They want to give the kids their presents." I walked to the door. My mother-in-law and Franklin stood on the porch, wrapped gifts in their arms. "We just want to see them for a moment," Franklin said quietly. "Just to say Merry Christmas." "You're violating the court order," I said. "Supervised visits only. And this wasn't scheduled or supervised. We're not coming inside. We just want to leave these." "No. You made your choices. Now you live with the consequences." I started to close the door. "Please," my mother-in-law said, and for the first time, she sounded genuinely broken. "Please, Melissa. Maybe after counseling. Maybe after you learn that love isn't the same as control. But not tonight. Tonight is for my family." I closed the door gently but firmly. Through the window, I watched them stand there for a long moment. Franklin put his arm around Diane's shoulders. She leaned into him, and I saw her body shake with sobs. Part of me ached at the sight. Despite everything, they were still Brian's parents, still the children's grandparents. But boundaries meant something, and tonight they needed to understand that. Brian appeared beside me, watching his parents walk slowly back to their car. "That was hard," he said. "Necessary things often are." Brian found me in the kitchen an hour later. "That was hard for you." "It was necessary for them. She needs to understand boundaries aren't punishment. They're requirements for relationships." He pulled me close. "I never thanked you properly. For being stronger than me. For protecting our kids when I was too afraid to. We're protecting them now. Together." Emma ran in, breathless with excitement. "Mama. Noah says Santa might come early because we were so good." "I didn't say that." Noah protested, but he was grinning. We spent Christmas Eve exactly as it should be spent, wrapped in blankets, watching movies, eating too many cookies. The kids fell asleep on the couch, Emma's head on my lap, Noah curled against Brian. "This," Brian whispered. "This is what Christmas should be." I couldn't argue. Alex and Aunt Gwen arrived around 9, after the kids were in bed. We sat around the table, drinking wine and talking. Gwen shared stories about Christmases from Brian's childhood, ones he barely remembered. "Your mother wasn't always like this," she told him. "Something changed after your father's parents died. She became obsessed with maintaining their legacy, with proving herself worthy of the family name. She forgot that family is about love, not performance. I don't know if she can change, Brian admitted. Maybe not, Gwen said. But you have. That's what matters. We raised our glasses to that. To change, to courage, to new beginnings. January brought changes. My mother-in-law started counseling as ordered. Her lawyer called to discuss visitation schedules. Supervised, limited, but a start. I set clear boundaries. No undermining my parenting, no criticism in front of the children, no unscheduled visits. Any violation would result in immediate termination of visits. She agreed to everything. The first supervised visit was awkward. She brought gifts and apologies, though they felt practiced. But she was careful, respectful. When Emma showed her a painting, she said, "This is beautiful. You're very talented." Baby steps. I knew we might never have a warm relationship. The hurt went too deep, the betrayal too complete. But for my children's sake, I could allow a limited, boundaried connection. On my terms. Always on my terms now. The visits were held at a family counseling center, with a therapist present. The first few were stilted and uncomfortable. Diane would bring elaborate gifts that the counselor gently suggested were excessive. She'd try to monopolize the conversation, then catch herself and apologize. Franklin mostly sat quietly, but I noticed he engaged more with the children than he ever had before. Asking about school, about their friends, actually listening to their answers. After the fourth visit, the therapist pulled me aside. "She's struggling," she said. "The counseling is bringing up a lot of her own childhood trauma. Her mother was apparently very controlling and critical. Diane's repeating patterns she doesn't even fully recognize yet." "That explains it," I said. "But it doesn't excuse it." "I agree completely. But I think she's genuinely trying to change. Whether she'll succeed is another question." Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and new beginnings. The kids were thriving. Emma joined the art club, Noah started soccer. They saw their grandparents twice a month. Brief supervised visits that gradually became less tense. One afternoon Emma asked, "Mama, why don't we see Grandma more?" I chose my words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups need time to learn how to treat each other with respect. Grandma is working on that. "Oh, okay." She went back to her drawing, satisfied. That night, I sat on our porch swing, watching fireflies dance in the darkening yard. Brian joined me, handing me tea. "Penny, for your thoughts. I'm thinking about last Christmas. How scared I was. How alone I felt. And now I know I'm stronger than I ever imagined. Strong enough to fight for what matters. Strong enough to say no, even when it's hard." He kissed my temple. "The kids are lucky to have you. We're lucky to have each other." Inside I heard Emma and Noah laughing over some shared joke. Our house, our rules, our family. Built on love and respect and boundaries that actually meant something. My mother-in-law had tried to take Christmas from us. Instead, she'd given me something far more valuable. The knowledge that I could stand up for myself and win. I smiled, sipping my tea, watching the fireflies dance. Everything I'd fought for was right here. Everything I needed. On my terms. Finally, completely on my terms. The counseling center called the next week to schedule our 6-month review. The therapist reported that Diane had completed her required sessions and was requesting expanded visitation. "I think she's made genuine progress," the therapist told me. "But the decision is ultimately yours." I thought about it for a week. Then I called a family meeting. Me, Brian, Alex, and Aunt Gwen. We discussed the options, the risks, the possibilities. In the end, we decided to allow unsupervised visits, but with strict conditions that we'd all agreed on. The first sign of old behaviors, and we'd return to supervised contact immediately. "You're being more generous than she deserves," Alex said. Maybe, I agreed. But Emma and Noah deserve the chance to know their grandparents, if their grandparents can learn to be the people they should have been all along. At the 6-month review, the judge reviewed the therapist's reports and our family's statements. She looked at Diane seriously. "Mrs. Franklin, This court is granting expanded visitation on a probationary basis. But understand this. You are one violation away from losing access to your grandchildren entirely. Use this opportunity wisely." Diane nodded, tears in her eyes. "I will, Your Honor. I promise." Time would tell if that promise meant anything. But as I left the courthouse with Brian's hand in mine, I knew that whatever happened, we'd face it together. Strong enough to enforce boundaries. Brave enough to offer second chances. Wise enough to know the difference. My parents had told me not to bring my kids to Christmas. It agreed on my terms. And those terms had changed everything.